Hello and welcome back to the Sims 4 Ultimate Decades challenge. Today we are finally at our second decade recap, which is kind of exciting. Let's just jump into it and see how we went for the past 10 years. We started off the decade with rolling to see which of our male Sims were off to war, and we did our first ever tallage roll, which thankfully wasn't too bad with it being 10%, big wins for the start of a new decade. Katrina gave birth to her fourth baby, another girl, little Caitlin, with both mum and baby surviving. At the McIntyre household, Oswald aged up into a child and Maggie into an infant, a great success for this little family. And Agnes Fairbairn aged up into an infant as well. So for all the rolls for 1310, we were going quite smoothly. To achieve the amount of 3,691 simoleons by the end of the year, we did a few yard sales to get us by. We did find Agnes stuck in a basil bush, which was utterly baffling, and kind of just a tiny bit funny. Maud made her first friend her age, Bobby Ward, who was a few social classes above her but seemed happy enough to get to know her anyway. We also found out that David absolutely disliked Judith Ward, not only finding her unattractive, but having an impression of her of anti-crush and hoping to never be around her. A wish that wouldn't be granted considering the yard sales we were doing that year. Sorry, David. After completing our sales and doing our tithe, we were able to successfully pay off our tallage for the start of the decade. We ended the year over at the Boyd household for some more birthdays. Caitlin aged up into an infant, and we rolled for Fiona's toddler age up, and this is where everything went so wrong. With no successful pleads, the year ended with our first toddler death in the challenge, something that would be mirrored in the last year of the decade at the same household. We started 1311 where we left off at the Boyd household for the fifth baby for the Boyds, with little Maeve being born. Unfortunately, this time around, only Katrina survived her rolls, and Maeve passed from stillbirth. This would occur twice more for the births this year. Right off that devastating moment, we rolled to see if Christian would survive his child age up, which he did, a small positive for the family after 2 losses in such a short period. Clary then gave birth to her fourth child and first boy, Ian. However, he did not survive and passed away due to a birth defect. Beatrix gave birth to her fourth baby as well, and like all of the other babies for this year, Cormac unfortunately didn't survive and passed due to a heart defect. This was the last birth for the year, and it brought hope for an end to the tragic loss of babies for the next few years. The McIntyres also got a new house this year, upgrading from their last one, which was too tiny to house even their little family. We worked on some skills as well, hoping to survive any future war rolls, and we picked up some new ones. The birthday twins, Maggie and Agnes, both safely aged up into toddlers, with the added bonus of Fergus accidentally reversing in age and becoming a toddler for a split second there. Whoops. And we ended the year with some family bonding time all around. The beginning of 1312 saw Angus and Hendry up for their war rolls. Angus failed his roll and Hendry succeeded. Thankfully, Grim must have felt sorry for the Boyd family, and Hendry's plea brought Angus back. Merida and Caitlin both successfully passed their child and toddler rolls respectively, and it seemed as though the Boyds were starting to escape the horribleness of the past 2 years. Clary gave birth again this year to our second boy, Dougal. Both mum and baby survived their rolls, and the Fairbairns welcomed their little heir. Deirdre was struck by lightning despite being inside the house, and so she was tapped out from any household chores for the rest of the year. The second birth of the year was at the McIntyre household, with Beatrix giving birth to another baby boy, Magnus, who unfortunately didn't survive his rolls due to a heart defect, just like his brother the year before. And honestly, this is where Beatrix and her struggle with wanting or raising children really starts to come into play. Beatrix didn't want kids and perceived her new baby as unwanted, whereas Thornfinn did want kids and saw Magnus as a loved child, so there was clearly conflicting feelings within this household. We ended out the year with the Boyds, as Katrina also gave birth to little baby Robert, who did survive his rolls, and it turned out to be the year of baby boys, though only 2 survived. 1313 was a pretty chill year with no major events happening and no births. We spent some time hanging out with Bobby, who was becoming fast friends with Maud. Everyone in the main household seemed to be coming down with something, which was not great news, especially with how quickly sickness can spread. Amidst the fever chaos, Dougal aged up into an infant, and over at the McIntyre household, Oswald safely passed his child roles, becoming the first proper kid in Beatrix and Thornfinn's little family. Beatrix also welcomed some new animals into her family, Croquette and Bodan, giving them wool and milk. And we also discovered that the relationship between Fergus and Eden had soured over time. Over at the Boyd household, Robert also aged up into an infant, quickly finishing all birthday roles for this year. We spent some time doing chores and hanging out with family. Both Fergus and David tried to become squeamish and were promptly declined that opportunity because it makes no sense. And Clary shared the news with Fergus that they were expecting another baby in the next year. 1314 started off as expected with the war roles for our families, with Fergus and Angus going to spend 2 years helping the war effort against England. Maud spent some time bonding with her aunts. This was a busy year with lots of birthday roles and 3 births as well, and this is what that looked like. Katrina gave birth to another baby boy, George, who didn't survive his roles and passed due to SIDS. Beatrix gave birth to little Owen, who thankfully survived his roles and became the 3rd McIntyre baby to survive. He was still seen as an unwanted child by Beatrix though. Dougal finally got put in a back carrier, and it was one of the cutest things I've seen in this challenge, even though it only lasted what felt like 2 seconds. Clary gave birth to James, and both mum and baby survived their roles, and yet again it turned out to be a year of baby boy births, with only 2 surviving, just like the year prior. Dougal, Agnes, Deirdre and David all aged up into toddler, child and elders respectively, and all were successful, clearing 4 out of the 5 roles for the day and 4 out of the 7 for the year. And over at the McIntyre household, Maggie survived her child roles as well, and Owen aged up into an infant. We ended out the year with little Robert's age up into a toddler, which he was successful with, and so out of 10 roles for the year, only 1 rolled badly, and that was baby George. But overall, it was a really great year for birthdays. In 1315, the famine had reached Scotland, and so we started with saying goodbye to our cow and chicken and crops. We also had to start rationing our food, which was very difficult considering Maud was, or is, a glutton. James aged up into an infant, and he would be the littlest Fairbairn for a year or so until Fergus got back from the war campaigns. Caitlin also had a birthday to age up into a child, which she did successfully. Maud continued on with her food shenanigans, something that would continue happening for the next 2 years, but what can you do? And honestly, she only got away with it because she's so cute. With no gardening or animal chores to do, time was spent hanging out and enjoying family time instead, and so we finally got to hang out with our cousins for the first time. Beatrix gave birth again to a boy, who we named Norman, and who, unsurprisingly, didn't survive his birth roles, passing from malnutrition, which made sense due to the ongoing famine. This pregnancy was apparently so bad for Beatrix that the moment she gave birth, she wanted to switch from being okay with pregnancy to being not okay with it, and honestly, she just kept throwing a spanner in the works every time I tried to get her to become more comfortable with slowly growing her little family. Straight after, Katrina went into labour and gave birth to, you guessed it, another boy, who we named Finian, and who, unsurprisingly for the Boyds, survived his roles. Maybe a little bit of their luck needed to be shared with the McIntyres. For the last day of 1315, we headed to the park for more family hangout time. 1316, we visited the war camp to see who survived the war campaigns this time around, and both Angus and Fergus did just that. Finian was the first to have his birthday this year, aging up from baby to infant. To celebrate Fergus's return back from war, Clary made roasted fish for the family, because they may as well use their food stores whilst they still could and enjoy a delicious meal. And over at the McIntyres, Owen did his roles to see if he would age up into a toddler, and he was successful, which is always a good moment for this family. Maud also shared that she would like a sibling, and Agnes shared that she wouldn't. But oh well, Clary was already expecting another baby. James aged up into a toddler, which did mean we had 2 toddlers, but he's a cutie, so all was forgiven. At the end of 1316, it was time for the first baby of the 2nd generation, Miss Maud Fairbairn, to roll to become a teenager. My most anticipated role for the year, and the most nerve-wracking, even with there only being 1 bad number. Luckily, she cleared it, what else should I have expected, and she aged up into the most adorable sim, with 7 baby tries waiting for her in the future. Right at the end of the year, Katrina went into labour, giving birth to David, her 9th baby and final boy, with both rolling safe numbers to end 1316 on a high. Right as it clocked over into 1317, Beatrix went into labour with her baby. Little Marjorie was born, however she unfortunately didn't make it, passing from malnutrition, like her brother Norman 2 years before, and leaving Maggie as the only daughter in the house for now. Maud continued on with her food antics throughout the rest of the year, trying to scam some extra food for herself during the famine. Right as we entered the 2nd day of 1317, Clary also went into labour, giving birth to Elsbeth and giving the girls a 1-up on the number of boy Fairbairn babies with a successful birth roll. Maud and Agnes went swimming in the stream to spend some time out the house, but not too far away from their home. This did cause Maud to develop a fear of the ocean though, which would be a problem if she wasn't destined to stay on land. And all the Fairbairn girls, sans Beatrix, embarked on an impromptu hangout. And because we hadn't had enough family time, the girls went to the park to hang out with their cousins as well. In the quietness of the year, our Fairbairn founders, David and Deirdre, became best friends. For the birthdays this year, Dougal safely aged up into a child, David aged up into an infant, and Finian into a toddler. Elspeth became an infant, and Robert a child. But we weren't done with the dice rolls for the year because the end famine rolls had finally arrived. We started with the McIntyres. Thornfinn, Beatrix, Oswald and Owen were fine, but Maggie rolled a bad number and it seemed as though her time was up. But Oswald pleaded with Grim for his sister's life, and thankfully he was successful, so that there was no need to worry. Second for the famine rolls were the Boyds. Angus, Alba, Hendry, Katrina, Christian, Caitlin, Robert, Finian and David all rolled to survive, but Diane and Merida did not. Merida was pled for, but we were unsuccessful, but the Boyds were granted with the return of Diane. Back home at the Fairbairns, it was finally their turn, with all our Sims surviving in the main household, leaving us with 1 out of the 23 Sims on our spreadsheet passing from the famine. In 1318, David and Fergus were fine. Thornfinn was sent off for the first time, and Angus went for a second time. Christian rolled to age up into a teenager and was successful, granting us our second teen for the second gen, and aging up just in time to miss being sent off to war. Lucky him. He also rolled to have 5 baby tries. Maud relished in the fact that she wasn't restricted to 1 meal a day anymore. The Fairbairns visited the local tavern to hopefully meet some new people. Maud did just that and got acquainted with Jameson MacDonald, though she found him a bit pretentious. Katrina interrupted the family outing by going into her last labour. However, when we got there, she had an extra baby that wasn't related to anyone in the household, and she still hadn't given birth yet. She gave birth to little Abigail to honour Hendry's younger sister, but she unfortunately didn't survive her rolls, passing from malnutrition, and so the Boyds lost their last second-gen baby, and the other random baby as well, who they still grieved even though they didn't actually know them. All the cousins gathered to go swimming in the stream together and spend some time enjoying the nice autumn weather. Beatrix also gave birth this year, bringing little Eric into the world, and both mum and baby survived their roles. Always a positive for the McIntyres. Fergus did his adult roles, which he thankfully passed. David Boyd was the last Sim to have their birthday this year, rolling from infant to toddler spectacularly, and saving his family from having to grieve again. We did our tithe for the season, which though small was quite successful for us, and Maud ended the year hanging out with her good friend Bobby and catching up on life post-famine. We finally reached the end of the decade and another year with so many birthdays. So we started off 1319 with a nice and simple one for Eric's infant birthday and another little blonde baby. Clary was the only Sim to give birth this year, and that was to a little boy who we named Harris, but was unsuccessful with his roles, passing from birth asphyxia. We visited the war camp for Hendry and Thornfinn's adult birthday roles, which they both passed, living to see another day on the campaign, and hopefully another day at home soon too. Notably, Maud was missing at the Fairbairn lot, and that was because she was starting a new chapter in her life by working as a cook at the castle. Maud hung out a bit with her new roomie, Evelyn, and they are surely going to become fast friends. Clary and David also visited Maud at the castle to check in on her in her new job and life. Maud and Evelyn spent some time getting to know some of the Sims around them, with Evelyn finding Jameson attractive, but Christian Boyd very attractive, and immediately striking up a conversation with him. Maud also continued getting to know Jameson better after meeting him the year prior. Owen aged up from a toddler into a child. Elspeth, James and Clary also had their birthdays for toddler, child and adult respectively. James and Clary were the only ones who rolled safely, with Elspeth rolling to pass from falling. Agnes was asked to plead with Grim, but apparently ignored my requests, because next thing we knew, Elspeth's soul was being whisked away and Agnes was declared my least favourite Sim. That's what you get for not even trying to help. Family came over to hang and help with the garden, and yes, that is Grim still hanging about and reminding us of Agnes's failure to save her sister. Oswald did his teenager role and was successful, becoming the third teen for the second generation, the first for the McIntyres, and the last for the decade. He also rolled to have 11 baby tries. yikes for his future partner is all I will say. Katrina's adult birthday roll ended out the decade with a positive, and so for another year of birthdays, we did quite well. Alrighty, so here is our Google Doc spreadsheet, which I showed in the last decade recap. We had 15 Sims who were alive and we only had 2 who were deceased, but you can see we increased that by about 12 Sims. Everyone in the Fairbairn household that we started off with originally is fine. As you can see, no one has passed just yet. And then we have Fergus and Clary's little family. They still have 4 more children to potentially have. They lost in total 4 babies, with 3 being losses from birth and 1 being a loss from toddlerhood. So this is how the Fairbairn family has looked for the last 2 decades. For the Boyd family, this is how they are currently looking. They are done with their baby tries. They have lost 5 babies out of the 10 they could try for, and one of those was a child, little Merida. I miss her so much. One of them has been a toddler, and the other 3 are babies who died during birth. And yeah, they're doing quite well though. As we can see, Christian has aged up and he has his own slot for when he is having his own family, much like Maud is over here, and Oswald with his 11 baby tries. And then yes, we go to the McIntyre family who have had 9 babies so far, and they are up for their last baby in the new decade. They have lost 5 babies as well, just like the Boyd family, but for some reason it just feels more devastating over at this household, and it's probably because, as you can see, all of them are babies. They're all babies that have passed. So yeah, hopefully, I won't jinx it, but hopefully baby number 10 is a little trooper and does very, very well. Otherwise, we will have 5 babies in the McIntyre household to hopefully continue on the name and the lineage and the legacy and the family tree, you know? I know at some point I want that to stop and I'll need to do population control, but I do want the McIntyres to survive. The Boyds are doing quite well at the moment. Let's knock on wood so that I'm not jinxing anything. And the Fairbairns feels a little devastating over at this household too. Feels a little small, but Maud has moved out, so that is bound to happen. Whereas Christian and Oswald won't move out of their homes, they'll stay there. So I do not know how that is going to go for baby tries. I might have to reconsider that, but we are at a recap at the moment, so it's not that pressing. Anyway, we have for the past 2 decades now, 21 Sims are alive, 14 have passed away, and in total we have had 35 Sims, so not too bad. And then over here for our stats, we've had 15 girls and 20 boys, so the boys this time round are leading the charge by an extra 5 Sims, but that is because we had about 2 years where we just had boy babies being born. We then have our age of death, which has changed a little bit since last time. We have moved up from 2 babies passing away to 11, and then we increased here with 2 toddlers and 1 child. Yet again, it is unsurprising that all of our Sims are Scottish. And then our last chart is our number of offspring per generation. We have our 2 founders, our 3 children, David, Katrina and Beatrix, and then we have all 27 of their kids collectively in here. And within the next decade, we will see a little graph here for generation 3, which is kind of cool. So this here is significantly bigger than last time. We can't even really see the Sims too well from this position, so we'll have to zoom in. We have our founders here, David and Deirdre, and then we have their heir, Fergus, and his lovely wife, Clary, and their 8 children. They do get 12 baby tries. So we've had an even number of girls and boys in this household, so the next baby will be the tiebreaker for the moment. We then have the Boyd family with all 10 of their babies, and then lucky last for now, we have Thornfinn and Beatrix McIntyre with their 9 babies. And yeah, that is our little, well, not so little family tree. And starting within the next episode or 2 with Maud's marriage, or at least potential marriage, she should have a kid early on within the decade, which means our family tree will expand out this way. And then Christian will expand out this way, and Oswald, so on and so forth. We do have some teen birthdays coming up as well. So, I hope you enjoyed this decade recap. I enjoy doing them. It's nice to see what our Sims got up to. Let me know if you're enjoying it so far. Let me know if you're excited to see our family tree expand and see how our stats go at the end of the next decade. So yeah, that has been the 1310s. I hope you're looking forward to the 1320s. I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are watching, and I will see you for the next one. Happy holidays if you celebrate Christmas, and I hope you have a great New Year's. Bye!